I've got kind of a serious story to tell you. Um, and I think one of the morals of the story, I'll tell you before I tell you the story, is that sometimes you never know what kind of burdens people carry. Sometimes we're very quick to criticize people, and we just don't know the story, the whole story. And I want to tell you, it's a tragic story, but I want to tell you a story about my uh, paternal grandmother, Zereta Harris. I love my grandma. She was a great lady. And she had this nervous laugh and red hair, and she wore her lipstick thick. She loved me. She told me how much she loved me, and she was a great lady. But we just don't know the tragic circumstances of people's lives. First, a couple of really cool things about my grandmother. She was born down in Mexico. She was a Mexican citizen until 1945. She spoke English and she spoke really good Spanish. And her father, he would be my great grandfather, was a polygamist. And he had to go live in Mexico to escape being arrested and doing some jail time up here in Utah. So anyway, he moved the whole family down to Mexico, and my grandmother grew up. Her birthday was a really cool date. It was July 24th, Pioneer Day, the year 1900. So it was easy to figure out how old my grandma Harris was. And we called her Ma. Especially my cousins called her Ma. She was a wonderful lady. But this is a really tragic thing, and I'm not trying to scare you or anything like that, but just be kind to people and know that maybe you don't know everything, because I certainly don't know everything. So she was an identical twin, and her first name again was Zereta, and her identical twin's name was Ireta. And I have pictures of both of them, and they were adorable, just cute as heck. But they were identical twins, and they lived pretty close to the little city in Mexico where they were. They had a lumber mill. Her father had a lumber mill, and they lived close to the city. And what these little girls, I think they were probably maybe 4 or 5. They'd see these, excuse me, they'd see these elegant women walk in these big kind of flouncy dresses down the boardwalk of the town, and they would be smoking. And they thought, my grandma and her sister, her identical twin sister, thought, that looks very chic, and that looks very elegant, very sophisticated. And so they went back to their house one day, and there was a dress-up, chest of drawers of dress-up clothes for little girls, like for Ireta and Zereta. And they dressed up in these dress-up clothes, which were extremely flammable, very kind of flimsy and cheaply made. And they decided that they wanted to look like these elegant women that they had seen down in the city. And so what they did was they took some newspaper and they rolled it up and made it into what they thought looked like a cigarette. And I think both of them put these things in their mouths. And I'm pretty sure, although I don't know this for sure, that my grandmother found some matches and she lit this newspaper cigarette because they wanted to look elegant and sophisticated. To their horror, to everyone's horror, this flaming piece of newspaper rolled up to look like a cigarette somehow caught on fire these flimsy, flammable dress-up clothes that my she would be my great aunt, Ireta, was wearing, and she caught on fire, and she had, third-degree burns and over a lot of her body before they were able to put out the fire. And she didn't die immediately, but she died within a couple of days from these terrible burns. And I didn't know that this had happened until maybe probably within the last 10 to 15 years. I found out through my cousins that this is what had happened. We had been told that that her identical twin had died from influenza or something like that, but we found out that it was because she had caught on fire. Can you imagine carrying that blame that my grandmother must have carried for so long, and how awful she must have felt? And it makes me love my grandmother even more than I do, and I admire that she was still a very upbeat and optimistic and very faithful woman. But can you imagine also what kind of reunion on the other side of the veil that these two identical twin sisters had when my grandmother passed away in, I believe it was 1982. Can you imagine? Oh, but we just don't know what burdens and terrible experiences sometimes people have. And it just makes me admire and love my grandma, Zereta Harris.